The author Philip Pullman says that fairy tales succeed because they begin with delight and they end with truth. So the story delights you in some way, and then by the end reveals some important truth. And he thinks that's why fairy tales have survived for so long. And remember, fairy tales are very, very old, and they're kind of cross-cultural. So as far as we know, lots of different cultures have Cinderella-type stories where the humble is raised up. Lots of cultures also have Sorcerer's Apprentice-type stories where the prideful are brought down. Okay, so there's something very powerful in the oral tradition. Those stories survive a very long time. So what can we learn from fairy tales? Well, I think personally, when I'm considering which stories to tell, I am also subconsciously trying to delight first and then deliver some truth. Now, what do I mean by delight? What delights me in a story? Well, I guess in descending order, the first thing I would say is funny. Things that make me laugh. I love funny stories. I love stories with a funny element to them, and I'm much more likely to repeat them if they make me laugh or smile. Okay, coming down in order of importance to me, the second most important thing I think is revelation. So stories where I learn something new. I go, oh my God, that feeling of, oh, that's interesting. Yeah, that feeling of curiosity, revelation, insight, light bulb moment, whatever it is, that is also, to me, a delight. And then, I suppose, the third most important for me is the feeling of helping other people. So hopefully by now you've noticed within the Storyteller Circle that I actually do enjoy helping people to tell their own story. I find that, very satisfying. I find it delightful. So when I'm thinking about which story should I use in this particular situation with this particular audience, I'm kind of starting with one of those forms of delight and then thinking, okay, what's the truth that this story tells that's useful to the audience I'm speaking to? Let me give you an example. About 25 years ago, I was working in the TV newsroom at the BBC in Manchester, and we spotted on the calendar that Morrissey, the lead singer of the Smiths, was coming back to Manchester for a performance for the first time in about 15 years. And so we thought, let's do something to mark this kind of culturally significant event. And I had a little bet with my editor at the time. And I said, look, I bet if I walk up to somebody in Manchester and give them the opening line or the first line of a Smiths lyric, I bet they'll be able to give me the next line. Because my bet is that this city, the hometown of the Smiths, is so familiar with their work that will be possible. So my editor accepted the bet, and she sent me and a cameraman off into the centre of Manchester. And I said to the cameraman, right, just keep rolling. I'm going to walk up to people with no preamble, no explanation, and give them a line of the song. So I walked up to this guy in the centre of Manchester, and I said, I would go out tonight, but I haven't got a stitch to wear. And he went, wait a minute. This man said it's gruesome that someone so handsome should care. And we went, yay, because he got the next line. Anyway, tried a few more times. And then I went up to a woman. Now, she was younger than the guy I had spoken to first, and that should have been a warning sign. But anyway, we were standing in Piccadilly bus station, and I said to her, if a double-decker bus crashes into us... Now, the next line is, if you know your Smiths, to die by your side would be a heavenly way to die. So I said, okay, if a double-decker bus crashes into us... And she went, I'd shit myself. Of course, we couldn't use that. But it made me laugh, the cameraman corpsed, and it still makes me laugh today because it was funny. Right, okay, there's my delight. A story that makes me laugh. I'm hoping it's made you laugh too. It's delightful, it's funny, it punctures the pomposity of my clever idea. I'm not so clever after all. The truth here, I suppose, the reason why I would tell this story, the truth here is about be careful when you're making assumptions about your audience. Be careful assuming that they know what you know. In that particular example, the telltale sign should have been this woman's 15 years younger than me. She was a kid in school when the Smiths were big, if she was even born. Of course she's not going to know the lyrics like the guy who's my age knows the lyrics. So I suppose the lesson there, the truth, is be careful about making assumptions about your audience. The delight is that moment the woman just went, I'd shit myself. Okay, so I hope you get the idea. You start with delight, yeah, and you end with truth. Now, just to be absolutely clear, when I say you start with delight, I don't mean the first thing in the story is funny. That's quite difficult. You've got to do a setup to make something funny. You've got to do a setup to make a reveal significant. You've got to do a setup to be helpful. Okay, so I don't mean that the first thing out of your mouth should be funny. I don't mean start with delight in that sense. I mean when you're planning which story to tell, start with delight. Start with thinking, the story I'm going to tell has got to delight me and hopefully delight my audience. Yep. And then I can get the truth in. So, okay, that's how you pick the story, not necessarily how you start the story, but it should be building up to a moment of delight. Okay. So, for me, as I said before, my delights are funny stuff, insightful stuff, and helpful stuff. Okay, that's what's driving me. What about you? What do you find delightful? Okay, put it in the comments. Where's your delight, and what kind of story do you tell that brings that delight to other people?